field, right. Paper maps, right? Yep, okay. This will be good. Okay, how are people doing? Oh, one other thing, because it's getting hotter. I have the AC in for my window. It's not running right now, but I think because of that, certain traffic sounds are going to be a little more audible this time around. I want to apologize for that, but you know, it's very warm in here. you know. All right, so I want to. I guess apologize isn't the right word because we didn't anticipate it, but at the end of last week's stream, well, it was ended because the YouTube servers went down, so we kind of got cut off when trying to explain the last thing before we were going into actually the process of what the level is going to be, or the process of building the level, and then we were actually going to start doing that. And so I'm just going to quickly recap a little of that at the beginning of this session. So I'm going to show the Unity culling thing again because there's an aspect of it I forgot. Also, it's fun to look at, I think. So yeah. So as I was explaining towards the end of last session, there are ways to basically minimize the amount of surface area that is being drawn at any given time by the game in order to make it run faster, because rendering is one of the most intensive parts of a game running. So there were a couple that we looked at in the case of a more contemporary engine like Unity. These are going to be present in Unreal as well. But there's frustum culling, which is the actual view cone of the camera. Things that are outside that frustum are not being drawn because we have baked occlusion, and the occlusion culling is also there. So basically we've pre-calculated a bunch of data that was dependent on things that exist in the scene that we know aren't going to move. These are marked static right here. And so that means that they can occlude other things from certain viewpoints. So if we say move around behind here, you can see this floor here, but if we then move over there are parts of the floor that you can't see from that view, and the game basically just says, well, we don't have to draw that at all. The significance of this as to where we're going to be going. Camera volumes, bake view volumes, right? I swear there was a way to see the occlusion volumes themselves. Edit, visualize. No? Okay. Alright, well, my mistake. So, if I... Oh, you can kind of see it. Usually in a project view, these are like blue. At least they were when working in Unity for Underworld Descendant. So the significance of these is that these are volumes that are stored in the data in something called an oct tree. So, oh, hey Matt, how you doing? Let me mod you. Woo. So let me see if I can do a little doodle right here to talk about this. So when you talk about something like a dialogue tree in a game, what's it? I'm trying to like organize this, even though it's going to be like a scrap doodle. In my Google Drive, tree doodle. So when you create something like a dialogue tree, that kind of comes with a set of data. The NPC says blah, and then based off of that, the player has, a certain number of options. Blah 2, blah 2, blah also. So the ways that the player traverses these in a tree, in a dialogue tree, like they have X number of options available to them. And so this is a structure called a tree in code. It has something here called a node, which holds a certain amount of data, and then it has connectors to other nodes, which in turn have their data, and those can theoretically farther down have connectors to further nodes down the tree. And so this doesn't necessarily need to just store conversation data. It can store other types of data. And for example, there are different structures that can be used, because in a dialogue tree, there's not necessarily a guarantee that any of these nodes will have a set number of branches coming off of them. You can have an arbitrary number of lines that the player could respond with at any given point, in theory, provided your tools allow it. But there are certain structures of trees that can be used advantageously, because how many branches you're going to have. So for instance, in the occlusion data, hang on. In the occlusion data, you have something called an oct tree, and maybe you've heard this before. But basically, an oct tree, like it says, is a tree where each parent node has 8 nodes branching off of it. Oct, like octagonal. And so either a node in the tree will have 8 nodes branching off of it, or it will have 0, and it will be just the end of that particular branch within the code in the tree, or the data in the tree, rather. And so, for instance, this is great at visualizing volume, because you can divide these into cubes that are all the same size at a certain level in the tree. But then, if you need to go and have a little more precise data, and this is me just sort of like figuring this out while messing around with it, you can end up having cubes, or they do show up as like rectangular prisms, like non-cube like shapes every now and again, and I'm not sure how it determines that. But if you need to get more precise, this will be a child node of a larger parent node that will contain a larger amount of volume. And so you can see, using this sort of visualization, the structure that the sorry, you can see like how this relates to like visibility. Like you're literally sort of displaying the contents of this data within the visual area, within the visual world. And so using this, you can keep track of like what's in what volume, and you can see how this volume, say, connects to a volume over here, you know, if one volume is visible from another. So that's a more contemporary look, but back in the day, no, don't save. Back in the day, and I just wrote stuff about this into an upcoming script. For culling, 3D graphics really didn't have that. People had just figured out how to like draw these things, but basically you had to draw like everything that was like present within a certain data set. And people hadn't figured out how to like minimize that. And as a result, like early 3D first-person games like Ultima Underworld and Wolfenstein 3D, they were not as fast as they theoretically could have been. But then for Doom specifically, John Carmack did some research and he found out about this thing called binary space partitioning, called BSP. And so it's pretty similar to an oct tree, except instead of 8 nodes for each, like binary implies, it's 2. And so this is sort of a strange thing to wrap your head around. Occlusion test map. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Occlusion demo. There we go. And so you're thinking, well, okay, yeah, but what does this have to do with level design? Well, as it turns out, for binary space partitioning, a lot. So for the editor here, off on my second monitor, onto the right, I've got my grid view over there. It's nice. I can get a whole monitor dedicated to that. So if I turn off this grid, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm kind of like stumbling through this explanation. It was very weird to have it truncated last week. But this is sort of a classic example. I adapted this from, there's actually a nice entry in the Valve developer wiki for working with BSP in Hammer. So for your like Half-Life 2 maps or your TF2 maps. And so the sort of classic example is, a U-bend in a hallway or something like that. And that's basically what we have here. This red box is the player start. The arrow shows us, where they're facing. And this is kind of hard to tell. It's a little messy, but this is a top-down view. And so if we actually pull this apart, let me see if I can show you. So here's the player start. We've got a hallway here. We've got something here called a viz portal, which I'm going to explain in a minute. But if we go through that, we have another viz portal on the other side. And then we have this other bend. So it creates this U. So if we look top down, from where the player starts here, if you want a full screen of in-game graphics, and if you want to keep that as efficient as possible, from this particular angle, the player does not need to see any of this right now at this point. And so the thing is, in Unity, when you bake occlusion, this would be taken care of for you. The occlusion data would know that it does not need to render this stuff, and it would cull it until the player comes around the corner and can start seeing it. And therefore it would be more efficient at rendering. For something this small, it might be a trade-off because occlusion isn't free in terms of computation time either. But for larger spaces, it's definitely a help. So the thing is, occlusion culling didn't exist at this time. Binary space partitioning was something Carmack pulled out of obscure 1980s thesis papers, and it was only theoretically possible, and then he put it into Doom, and that was sort of the first proven case, at least in video games, where it could actually help. And so we are working in the Doom 3 engine at least, so it's a little more advanced. But this is also going to get a little more weird because in the case of Hammer, at least, for Half-Life 2 maps, you would place these things called portals, or hint brushes is sometimes the vernacular. And so this right here is sort of how you divide the level into chunks. And these end up being the end nodes on the binary tree that represents what's visible and what's not in a given map. I know that's weird and abstract, but we kind of have to deal with it as level designers in this. So, at least in theory, oh boy, love Boston. So, at least in theory, when you subdivide your, say, Doom 3 map into chunks, or in this case, a Dark Mod map into chunks using these portals, that lets the game calculate and compile the visibility of one area of the map to another right as you are building the map. And so, in theory, if you have chunks of the map that are divided from each other by these portals and they aren't visible from each other at any given point, then, one chunk shouldn't render next to another. Now, this is weird for me to say because this is a deliberately bad example, and I'm going to show you why. Actually, let me go into this. Occlusion demo, correct? DMap occlusion demo. Oh, this is the Dark Mod, by the way, and here's the console. I know we show this a little bit, but this is sort of the process that we're going to be using to get maps running in our game anyways. So we have to run this command called dmap, and then we type in the name of our map, and it does a compilation process there, and that's where the visibility is calculated. And so from there, we just change that to map occlusion demo, then we're going to load in. Press attack to start the mission. Oh, yes. Beautiful graphics. So yeah, like I said, here's our environment. Just a big old U-bend, and we're starting over here. Now, again, in Unity, if we baked occlusion data, if this engine had occlusion data at the time. The bend around, the area around the bend that would be through that wall should not be rendering. And this is a little tricky because in the case of Hammer in Half-Life 2, it would be, because that is how that particular implementation of binary space partitioning works. But something I forgot that I didn't know, show portals 1. No, come on. Our show portals 1. Is that there's another pretty simple but also very nice optimization that the Doom 3 engine adds. So if you recall, there were our 2 portal planes around this bend, and this actually corresponds to where they are within the map. So when a portal is open, it's outlined with this green, and when it's closed, it's outlined in that red. And basically what that means is that when a portal is open, the chunk that it is a border of on the other side is determined to need to be rendered at the player's current position. So basically that means that, that chunk of geo is being rendered, and so this is a pretty narrow view of it, but because of that little bit in the middle there between the 2 portals is being rendered right now, even though we can't see most of it. And so that's a less efficient than it could be setup for this map. Now again, normally in Hammer, that red portal would be open, but it seems that this optimization for the Doom 3 engine actually makes it so that if 2 portals are next to each other and they don't overlap on the screen here, then the farther portal won't actually open, and that's a nice little improvement. And it makes it a little more confusing for me to actually explain what's going on here. Show tries 2, I believe. All right, so here's like the triangles that are being rendered at any given time. Actually, yeah, you can kind of, because this border of this portal is flush with the corner. It's exactly where it is. But even though it's flush with the corner, you can see on the right side of it, there's still parts of that triangle being drawn. So then when you go through here, the other side of the hallway is being rendered. But the thing is, even though you have this particular optimization that this side of the hall is not being rendered through the wall, it's not the most efficient way we could set up this hallway in terms of its geometry. So the fact that this is now open and rendering the other side of the hallway, from this particular angle, we don't need to see like all this down there, but it's going to be rendering that. And so if you think about it, smarter portal placement to divide this into chunks would be to say, take the portals and sort of rotate them 90 degrees to be flush, or to be like parallel with that particular face. And so basically from up to here, the other side of the hallway would not render. And in fact, we're going to do that and do a quick comparison. All right, so this is going to be a little tricky. Actually, I'm just going to keep the grid view off to the side. Just know that that is what I'm doing. Okay, so if we take this, I'm going to resize this, what's called brush. Q, there we are. And I'm going to stretch it instead out along this part of the hallway. So the tricky thing about, oh, come on, I need a good view here. That's good enough. The tricky thing about this is that we are dealing, at least with these primitives, in terms of cubes. You can make different shapes, and in fact, once we start blocking things out, we're going to be using things like the vertex tool and the edge tool to reshape these things into kind of arbitrary shapes. But basically, you can independently apply different textures to each face here. And you can individually select different faces. And so, say for example, I make this match the floor. So yeah, this whole cube is like this flagstone's gravel texture. But if I apply this, it is just that particular face that is switched to the cobblestones texture. And so this has to deal with decoration, but certain pieces of information are actually conveyed through the use of certain textures. So we have the Viz Portal texture here, which is what this sort of beige and pink one is. And so we don't want a portal up against the wall to be drawn because that'll be terribly inefficient. But instead, we are going to put that here. And then the rest of this shape is in the no draw texture, which means it just doesn't have any info there. It's just basically there for cases like this, where you need one particular face of a brush to convey information, but the rest of the brush doesn't matter. So we're going to do that again, but with this portal. There we are. And this is going to be something that's a little tricky. I'll do this just for demonstration, but when you select a brush and you don't select a particular face, if you click on the texture, it just applies the texture to the whole brush, which in some cases is nice and easy, and it doesn't really matter. But in the case of, say, making portals, that's not good, because each individual face is going to be seen as a divider between chunks. And so it wouldn't be valid in this case particularly, but if I move this over 2 units, so that it's flush with this particular face, you have a valid portal face along here. But the thing is, this face as well on the other side is also seen as valid. And this is like a really thin brush right here. But basically, this space in between the two portal faces within the brush will be seen as like a valid chunk dividing it. And so that adds more volumes to the binary space partitioning tree, and you want to keep that tree as lean as possible. So something as simple as that can be seen as like a mistake, and can actually lead to issues with performance. So if I just select one particular face, that's not what I wanted. You'll just kind of see, it's tough to see, but there's this blue dot in the middle for any face that's selected. I just applied no draw to the whole thing. I'm going to apply a vis portal to that particular face. And then I'm going to move this over to units. And so as a level designer, you need to consider where these things are going to be placed when you're using a level editor or an engine where BSP is present. So we're going to do that again. Oh, this will also get into something. I accidentally made it leak. So it won't run the file. So in BSP, it is dependent that there is no possible way for the player to see outside the bounds of the level. This gets into a more complicated rendering thing, but basically, when you're rendering a particular screen using BSP, it's basically drawing over the pixels that were there in the prior frame. And so that is dependent on there being geometry there. And so if you're looking out at, a particular view where there is no geometry, then nothing gets drawn over those pixels, and you're basically stuck with what was there in the last frame. And it gets into this bizarre Hall of Mirrors effect. And so in Hammer for Half-Life 2, you can actually run the maps with a leak, and you can actually see it. But we basically have to build it. People use the analogy of like a spaceship or a submarine. It needs to be quote-unquote airtight. And so something is causing this to leak outward. And I need to figure out what that is. So if I go to... Oh, where's that thing? It's been a while. Edit file. Point file. Okay, here we go. So basically this starts from the player start. Or rather, it goes to this light entity. Huh. That's strange. Okay. Okay, so see, that was my mistake. Because there's no draw on this particular plane, that's not going to block visibility at all. So therefore, the player could see out into the gray void here. So yeah, I don't know how that happened. That was when I was messing with this, probably. Okay, crisis averted, but that's probably going to happen. Oh, great. Both were selected somehow. What the hell? So I'm going to do now. Select the whole thing. Oh, hang on. My apologies. What is going on here? I'm getting very confused. All right. Okay, here's where the portal was. And here's where the portal is now. Okay, so we're good. We're good. We're good. All right. Let's try that again. Yay, we've solved the leak. Okay, so if we are show portals 1 now, boom, they've moved. And now they're flush with each other. Or parallel to each other. I mean, they were parallel to each other. You know what I mean. So from this view, and if I do our show tries to again, so it's sort of a compromise in that parts of that opposite corner are being drawn. But at least from this view, nothing past that portal, that red portal, is going to be drawn because we're not in a chunk that is contiguous with the chunk that's on the other side of that portal. So the computer knows it doesn't have to render it at any point when we're in this particular volume. But if we go across, boom, rendering. And so at least this way we minimize, from this particular view, how much is being drawn on screen at any given time. But that comes with here being technically the least efficient part of the map. And that's just sort of normal. Because it's connected to both these chunks on the other side of these portals. And so therefore it needs to draw both at any time, because as far as the renderer knows, I could be at any point in this area. So I'm going to complicate it further. Well, not complicate it further. But basically because of this, there are some rules about this that we still need to go over. So by default, when you, and let me move out here, for instance, and pull this over. Just tuned in, so in IdTech 3, you have to set up BSP zones manually. Dang. Yes. Yes, you do. So, or rather, I'm not sure, but like the tools are there at least. So just in the grid view, this is nice and efficient, and I love this particular mode of the tool. I'm not sure what the tool is called, but what's it? QE? Resize. QE equals resize, sure. But basically you can just drag on, whoops. You can just drag on the screen at any given point, provided you don't have anything selected. And you can just draw a cube out here, which is pretty nice. And with this tool selected, if you click outside the bounds on a particular face, you can resize it and keep like the rest of it intact. But then if you click within the bounds and you move around, you're actually just moving the brush, which is pretty cool. But here's the thing. By default, and if I have this selected, I'm going to go to our entity view. This tells us all about what's here. In the entity view here, by default, when you create a piece of geo, oh, Carl, I thought I closed Slack. God damn it. By default, this is something called world spawn. And world spawn is something that the binary space partitioning is going to use to base the visualization data off of. So anything that is world spawn is going to cut up the what's called viz tree or visualization tree along all of its planes. And so, for instance, if we draw something here, and if we give it a, man, let's do that. It doesn't look good, but you'll get the point. If we draw like a column here, this is still considered world spawn. And so this is going to start dividing up the viz tree in more ways than needed. And again, we want to keep the size of the viz tree minimal so that it can render as efficiently as possible. So as before, we only really had 3 zones that were being divvied up, although there were certainly little bits here and there. So basically along this inner wall, we drew this out, and if I actually hide this, if we draw along this inner wall, this plane is going to cut through the geo like that to make a viz leaf is what it's called. It's the last node in a viz tree, which represents a particular volume in the space. And then along here, it's going to cut into the geo like that. So we've got this and that, as well as over here and on the other face, on the other side up here. So basically we have 5 viz leaves, if I'm correct. I might not be. With just that geo, because that's just how the world spawn is set up. And that's just how the shape of the room is divided up. Oh, whoops. My mistake. How do I unhide? Jeez. Okay. So I hid that particular portal, and now I can't remember how to unhide. This is not great. I think it's Control-Shift-H. No. Oh, God damn it. All right, people. Troubleshooting. Live troubleshooting. I'm sorry. View. Hide show. Oh, there we go. Show hidden. Shift-H. Okay. Whew, there we go. Again, we'll do that. But the thing is now that we have a world spawn here, this is going to cut up the viz tree even more. So along this particular plane, the binary space partitioning is going to part the space along these faces. And so we're going to get this sort of 9 grid along here. And these lines are actually going to extend all the way over to here up against this wall. And so the thing is that this is more complicated than it needs to be in terms of its visualization. Fortunately, there is a way to deal with this. Oh, and the other thing is that, and this will be particularly relevant for the concept of the level that we're going to be building. But once this is set as world spawn, this cannot move during runtime. Like, it's static. It has to stay this way, or else, if it moves and then the player can see behind it, then, you have the player looking out into, the empty void outside the map. And, therefore it's going to draw weird things. So you can't really change the visualization data on the fly. So instead, to solve both of our problems, or at least one, I'm going to off-screen. Well, actually I should show this. Here's that column on screen. I'm going to convert to func static. And now this is something, instead of world spawn, like this wall, this is a func static. And so the great thing about this is that it's static geo, except for, I think, if it's bound to something that's moving. I'm going to have to test that again. But the thing is, this is just static geometry. But it's not going to cut up and slice up our visualization data. that way. That normally, a world spawn brush would. But the thing is that it's also kind of tricky because portals need to, along all their edges, be up against a piece of world spawn. So for instance, if I, say, took this inner wall and I converted to func static, and I'll show you in-game, these portals aren't going to work anymore. They're not going to be computed when we demap, and therefore like the whole room is just going to render at any given time because there's nothing theoretically blocking the visualization. Demo, right? There we are. R show portals 1. Wait, really? Huh. Oh, huh. Well. Oh. Well, I can't say that was the result I was expecting, but I think it definitely shows the issues with visualizing things with func static. All right. Honestly, I'm not sure I can explain this one. But you can see the problems here. And so we need to be very considerate as to what is being bordered around portals. And I'm sorry, this was getting a little more long-winded than needed to be. But if I revert to world spawn there. Okay, again, so why do we care as level designers, and how is this going to impact our particular case? So if I bring this over here, our level design doc from last time, there are a couple of things that are notable about the layout for BSP. First off, is that it basically means that very long lines of sight are not very efficient, because if you were to say line, if you were to say have a portal here, let's make that like green or something, I don't know, make it thicker. Here it has a portal here and a portal here and a portal here to subdivide this area into 1, 2, 3, 4 chunks in between. This area is visible from that area, like completely. And so that means it's not terribly efficient. So you would need to use your portals in a smarter way. And so this is sort of why this lip is here in building B. Because instead of doing that, you can kind of put a portal here, put a portal there, and then put a portal here-ish. I might need to move this out to accommodate. But basically because of that, then like from this side, you couldn't see like this alley, for instance. And so because of that, you have to accommodate for the shapes that are going to be drawn at any given time. And because of that, you may need to reshape the layout of the map itself. And in the case of, say, a very long linear canal, that might not be the most efficient. Like I was saying last session, this was initially like way larger. Like I wanted a separate set of buildings on the other side of the canal, and I wanted two ships like moving past each other at the same time. And I wanted not 2 locks in between, but 3 locks, and all of that was just, way too big to handle, at least I think. Not just in terms of like portalizing, but also in terms of that's just more space in a level that I'm going to have to build out. And I've cut down quite a bit. I feel way more comfortable with this, but I'm still thinking it might be a little too much to work on. And so that's sort of my concern with this. The other thing is that this concept for the ship to move through the canal is it's dependent on it being mobile. And so the thing is, if world spawn defines visualization data, then that basically means that anything that is moving, especially if it's a moving room, can't occlude or cut off visualization of other areas, which basically means that if you are in view of the ship at any point, the whole ship is going to render. Because, again, if you need all the like little walls in the interior to move, then it just can't cut off or occlude any of the stuff that's inside of it, which is not terribly efficient. So that gets me a little worried about this, and I know it's a technical risk. And I hope that we can make it work regardless. But basically, I have down towards the bottom of the level design doc, where is this technical risks? I've just written a short section about all this stuff. And basically, I have a series of like backup plans. And these are things that I really don't want to do because it's going to make the level feel way more lame. But in order to fit the ship model provided, the space of the lock needs to be very large. Boy howdy. The initial idea for the level was to have 2 ships passing through. Yes. This has been reduced to 1 ship going through 2 locks. The original idea for the map also includes areas on both sides of the canal. This has been reduced to areas on one side. In order for the ship to move with its interior geometry, it cannot be world spawn geo, meaning it will not cull any areas that are not visible when the player is inside of it. As such, within the ship may be the least performant area of the map. Any hacks that are present to get this area running more smoothly should be considered. Here's the backup plan. If this cannot be accomplished, then the ship may have to just be made static with canal movement abandoned entirely, which means it's just going to be like docked here the whole mission. And I think that could work, but I think that is a way less interesting concept for the level. And that's kind of what concerns me. Are we going to be able to make this work? And so for building this space, I think the best way to go about it is when we get into the blockout, which we will do momentarily. I think I'm going to start with the ship itself here. I'm going to kind of close it off in an appropriately scaled area. And I'm going to use the ship model provided to me. And I'm just going to do the interior of that. And we're going to see how that works, how that feels. We're going to get it moving, see if any of the... if there's any aspect of a whole moving chunk of the level that we can't implement. That way we will know more quickly if we have to just abandon the whole concept. And then from there we will start, if it works and it's okay, then we'll start building out here in this area. And then we will just have to monitor performance as we go. And if it gets to a point where the performance is just abysmal, then we may just need to, dock the ship and just keep it there the whole time. Which is, again, not something I want to do, but we might have to. And so that was my big roundabout way of saying, like, I made a concept of a level where this is a huge technical risk, and I'm a big dummy for doing that. All right. Yeah. So briefly, let's also just talk about the timeline of making a level. So I'll let you also see what I have planned here. This is just the vague doc I've been going off of for the past session in an hour. So, first, we're going to start with something called the blockout. And I've been saying that a lot. What does that mean? A blockout is basically just, well, it's like this. You make very basic shapes in the map according to what you want to do. And you just do that because A, it's quick, and B, it'll more quickly give you a sense of if the scale of everything is okay. If it feels right, if it's too large, if it's non-performant, if there's just any little tweaks that you need to make for any reason. And again, I think for every step we're going to go, I'll do it to the ship first and its interior. I'll do it for that, and then I will do the rest of the step for the surrounding area. So first we'll do blockout. Then we're going to do gameplay and scripting. And that'll include things like, actually writing scripts to handle all the logic of this moving. And this will also include placing keys and getting those hooked up to doors that will be unlocked by said keys. We will place guards and have them start moving along their patrol paths. Excuse me. And so the thing is, in the case of the dark mod in particular, it's a little weird. This is complicated because of Thief gameplay. Normally, gameplay and scripting would be the rest of it, and then we would send that out for our first play test to people. And then we would leave lighting and texturing towards later steps. But the thing is that in Thief, the particular texture of the floor that you're walking on is very important to gameplay. To the point where, in these diagrams, I had to specify what you're stepping on at any given point. And so, I have to specify this is wood, this is carpet, this is stone out here. Here's a little bit of tile. So it's weird. We wouldn't normally texture stuff. Like in Half-Life 2, you would wait until after you get your blocking and gameplay and scripting done. But, the gameplay is dependent on the texture. So we're going to have to include that. And the same with lighting. Lighting would normally be a pretty late thing, I think. But because it is a stealth game that depends on light areas and dark areas, and we have to specify in these diagrams where these lights are, like here, for instance. because we have to specify that that's technically part of the gameplay pass. Like, it needs to be there in order to get an accurate sense of how the level plays. And so we're going to do blockout, gameplay and scripting, and then lighting and texturing, and then we're going to get into a playtest session with, all you out there. And then we're probably going to do another lighting and texturing pass, not just for, functionality. This is more like functional in terms of like getting a sense of how the thing plays. And this is going to be more pushing towards aesthetics. And then we'll do a decoration pass, and that's going to include like prop placement. That's going to include like doing trim and supports. And then we'll get into optimization. I feel like we're going to do that as we go anyways. But, there's going to be a lot of little things that we can do to make the map run more efficiently if we need it to. We'll see how performance is once we're done with this. And we'll do a sound pass, placing sounds, ambience. Just like little bits of music here and there, possibly. And then we'll get into a second testing session. Then we'll do a second pass on any needed aspect. And then we will release the whole map. And so those are kind of just the steps that we're going to do. I should also add after response to feedback. And so ideally, with the testing session here, we're going to be looking for feedback with any of the steps prior. Like, our playtester is telling us the geometry doesn't make sense. Our playtester is telling us they found a bug in the scripting, or they think that a particular segment of the level is boring. And then we will adjust according to that, or make an assessment like if they have substantive enough feedback that we can act on it. And then for the testing session 2, again, response to feedback. And this will include, this will probably more focus on the nice aesthetics and the looks of it, performance as well, but that can still include any of these earlier steps. And then, tweaks here and there, and then we'll put it out. And so those are sort of the milestones that we're going to be running by. Okay. So, let me see. I've also got paper maps set up here, just to show you a little of the process prior to this point in making the level design document. Like, I have these clean little clinical doodles here that's showing the layout, but prior to that, and I have my graph paper next to me, and I'll be working more off of that. But I just drew it on graph paper. Here's the untouched up. It's a different angle. But yeah, this is an area that I drew on graph paper and then translated to building A, and you can see it. So just know that I'll be working off of this because it's right next to me in person. And that's sort of how I'll be able to determine the scale here. Because, I erased all the little graph paper lines in the scan. And oh man. Wow. I think that's it. Before we get into actually building this thing out. So, sorry, I know that was a bit long-winded to get there. But oh, hey there. Hi there, Nekafor. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but Yeah. Anyone have any questions about stuff up to this point? Because I know I blew past some like half-explained complex topics. It's a little tough, I know. Actually, for to account for the delay, let me show you. Was it scale test? No, moving node test map. So I did a couple of test maps just to be completely sure that all the components of... No, that's not what I wanted. Just to make sure that all the components of the ship moving through the canal were technically possible. And there are some hacks that I've been able to do to get some of it working. But it primarily started as a moving node issue. So like I was concerned that AI were not going to be able to patrol along moving areas, which they would need to if they're going to be patrolling on a ship, because that's going to be moving. Fortunately, it works, although it did work at some point in this test map, and then it stopped working. I'm not sure why. I think it's like I need an AI hint brush. We'll get into that in a future session. But basically, for each segment of this and each aspect of this, I needed to make sure that the ship can move, that we can move water levels, that AI would be able to keep patrolling along with the ship. Yeah. So here's like all the little bits of that I was testing out. That included moving water levels, and that was sort of a hack that I had to do. Because you can't necessarily move water volumes according to like having it like lerp on a spline, and by that I mean linearly interpolate its position, which means that it'll just calculate where it needs to be every frame until it stops where it's supposed to be. I'll show you. Moving node test map. I believe that's demapped, so we can just jump right in. Moving node test map. And any... Is this for a real game or just practice? Yeah, it's kind of practice. Oh, come on. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it's a little tough to see, but you can kind of see the refraction here, and that's the water volume that we just saw. And I don't remember which button is hooked up to what. Actually, I think the ship's going to move, because I think that's where I left it. But basically, that was just to test that, the ship model could move along a curve that's specified. And it turns out, yes. And then it like restarts every time I hit this. Isn't that fun? So yeah, also just to give you a sense of how I had to make sure that everything was like going to be able to be feasible in this map. Sorry, I guess it would have been smarter for me to have like 3 separate buttons for the 3 separate things to just show off, and I did not do that because I was lazy. I'm sorry. All right, well, I guess enough procrastination. Let's make a new map. Oh my god. So unprepared. Okay, so like I promised, I'm going to start with the ship, but we need to first make a space large enough to accommodate it. So I think I will actually start with making the locks in the canal. And these are some pretty large guys. Does world spawn refer to all geometry brushes? I was a little confused on that. No. World spawn refers to all geometry brushes that will affect the BSP tree or the viz tree. So world spawn is the only type of thing that will cut up the world into viz leaves, and it's the only thing that portals can be up against in order for them to validly render. Does that make sense? If you do something for func static, actually, let me go back and give a little bit of a better demonstration. So, for example, let's say we're making a dining room. Let's pretend this is a dining room. A very strange dining room, I know, but bear with me. So let's say we're doing that and we want to do decoration. And we're like, well, what does a dining room have? Well, you start along the walls and you would have like ceiling trim and probably a couple of columns here and there and like baseboards to make it look a little more like a dining room, like a place where people live. And so the default, if you create a shape, is for it to be world spawn. So let's just say that that's our, let's just say that this is our baseboard. Oh, whoops, that's outside the bounds. There we are. Then, I'm putting way too much effort into this, but let's just pick like a wood texture to apply to that. Boards. Green planks? Sure. Hey, look at that. Or, let's say we're making like a support beam for an angle, something like that. Because this is world spawn, again, this is going to cut up the viz tree along this particular face, and it's going to cut like basically ankle height across the whole room into this, and so that creates more viz leaves that the renderer is going to have to sort through at any given point. And so if you, oh, my fault. Yeah. And so you wouldn't necessarily want a board along the base of a wall to do that. And so in order to get it to not do that, but still also be, static, you just convert it to func static. And it won't, it won't cut up the viz tree at all. Like, it's sort of excluded from that, but it'll be, culled from particular views the way like any of the world spawn would. I hope that makes sense. Okay, cool. Why using such an old engine? Mostly just because it's for the Dark mod, which is a Thief style game. It runs in it, and I just like making stuff for it. It's also useful because it's just a game that has all its systems and mechanics in place. They've already been made, so I can just focus on making a level. Whereas when you open a Unity project, like, there's nothing there. Like, you can buy certain like packs for gameplay, but otherwise you would need to actually implement the gameplay yourself before you could start making levels and getting a sense if they're like a good fit for whatever gameplay. And so I prefer to have tech that's there that's just like we can jump straight in. All right. Now we're making a new map. Woo! So the thing about this, and the thing about this series of streams is that part of it is I wanted to communicate, how much time it takes for design to do its job. And the thing is that a lot of that time is actually pretty boring. And so that's why I'm trying to, get people on for interviews later on. And that's why I'm trying to do a more interactive thing with the playtesting stuff. So hopefully it'll be a little more engaging. But I feel like we just need at least one session where it is kind of dull. So my apologies ahead of time, but we're going to start seeing this take shape, and we're also going to start communicating the sense of, how long it takes to get this sort of work done. So my apologies that it's going to be a bit boring. I think I will be prepared to get a coworker on for next Sunday, and so we can start talking with people. So just know that I'm trying to actively consider how to do this better, or how to still keep this engaging. So actually on my second monitor I have the little Google Doodle up for the overarching area, and that's all drawn to scale. So I'm gonna mutter to myself to count like the number of 128 unit blocks that the wall needs to be before I commit to it in Engine. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I'll just do this. It's at least visual, right? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39 is in the middle of here. 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58. So this wall is going to be 58 times 128 units long. Hoo boy. So, actually, what is that? Let's calculate. All right. Pretty large area. All right, so let's switch back to this. And this was 7424. Okay. And I believe it was 128 thick, right? Yep. All right. Set that to 128. By the way, for the grid view, you can actually tell the subdividing lines here by this little doohickey if I switch them around. Something nice here about the showing how much time it's going to be as well is that it does actually have an in-editor timer. So if I click away, it'll pause. I click back in, it'll keep going, which is pretty handy for keeping track of how much time there is. So it's 7424. So zoom out here. Oh, that's a little too far. 7 7424. All right. So that's how long it is. The depth is all right, although we can't really see it from this angle. Yeah, the depth's all right. This is the top view, right? Oh, I'm gonna have to make a bold choice because the level design doc does not necessarily specify height, and that's kind of the limitation of a top-down view. All right, well, if I recall, the ship is about like 2,000 units tall. All right. It's a large one. Actually, we should just get that model in for reference. So if I create model. Oh, where is that thing? Nautical? Okay, yeah, here are the boats. Galleon hull open. That's the one. All right. Okay. So here we have the whole ship. And, we want room for the whole thing. Probably not a lot more. Because again, larger space means, more stuff that needs to be drawn. Oh, hey, we get to name this. Canal. Woo. I'm going to be checking back now and again. So you want decorative brushes to be func static and major geometry as world spawn to cull properly? Yeah, pretty much. So the ship moves forward and the player is hidden in it and he can step outside at any of the current adjacent buildings. No, actually it's the opposite. We went over this last session, but that's all right. So the concept of the level is for the player to start around here. They kind of show up, they go through building A, and then they're supposed to steal a thing off of a ship, and then go through building A, and then they see this thing start to move through the canal, and so they need to get onto the ship, steal the thing, and then get back off. And because this thing is moving through, there's going to be a time limit. So if it reaches the end, the player will fail the mission. And again, that's kind of integral to the concept of it. So if we end up having to compromise and keep the ship still, then it's just going to be way more boring. I'm not going to be happy about that. Here's hoping we don't. Oh, right. So if I pull up the other area. Right, let me get this back on so we can actually see. So the width of the water here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 128 times 128 is 1024. Nice, base 2. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's base 2. I'm just it's kind of neat. Something when I am measuring things, I kind of cheat. I just make a duplicate of the particular shape, and then I kind of move it out to here so I can more cleanly count along its border. Oh, this is weird because it's going to be like a half of something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 and a half. All right. 17.5 times 128. 2240. All right. 40. Okay. So now we know the size of that particular piece of water. So if I no, I have to go back down to 64 for this. 2240 and then 1024. All right. We're gonna bring the height down on this, like that. And I'm not gonna make this water yet. Or maybe I'll, I don't know. Actually, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna make this like a gravel texture. So here's our media explorer as well. Just got search through for particular textures. It's a little unorganized, but you know, natural. Here's a little preview: gravel gray, gravel brown, cracked, gray dirty. No. I'm not too committed to this, but you know, it'll do for now. God, I keep doing that. Something I also have to bring up for this particular level editor, Dark Radiant, which comes with the Dark mod. I mean, I believe Radiant, which is the id Tech one, it has the most bizarre default bindings for anything. So normally when you're doing, you know, fly camera, which is like I right click in here, I'm able to move the camera around with the mouse, and then you can move it around. Typically, especially in like Unity and Unreal these days, that's defaulted to like WASD. So it's kind of like first-person shooter controls, which is strange that first-person shooter game controls could influence the tools that make them. But yeah, it's mapped to WASD normally, but in Dark Radiant it isn't. You have to use the arrow keys specifically to move around, and so I keep hitting like S here, and that brings up the Surface Inspector. That's not what I want. There's some very bizarre defaults here. Like, you can't just click on something to select it. You have to hold shift and then click. And if you hold shift and click to select something else, it's a multi-select. And so you have to do shift alt click to only select one thing. And it's so bizarre, and I don't know why. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. Let's bring this back over. This is, I'm guessing, an extra half long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 times 128. Can I mental math that? No, I don't think I can. 15 times 128. Well, that would be 1280 plus 640, right? Yeah, 1920. All right. So we'll take this. Oh, and like spacebar is clone. Is like make a copy of it. I have zero idea why. Alright, so 1920. Do I want this to be all the way up? Yeah, I guess so. Then again, we could also shrink this down a little bit. It is in the side view, like the top of that is like barely just above the top of the mast on the ship. So I think we'll be all right. Oh, I have to accommodate for like height changes when it's going down further. Oh my god. We'll figure that out as we go. Oh, I didn't see the player start of the map. Well, that's fine. My own limited time in Unreal ad for DX modding has given me an appreciation for how much effort goes into level design. Nice to observe from the start. Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, definitely. Okay, and so we have that here, and we have... Alright, so we need to switch over to this, and here's the locks. Here's the actual like moving bits of the locks that we're going to be making. So this is just 128 by 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Don't need to calculate that. Just eyeball it. So I don't like how this is like 64 units off of the grid line. I'll deal with it. Actually, no, I'm just going to round this out to be a multiple of 128. So actually, we'll just duplicate that. And that is 4 times 128 long, and then 128 thick. This is actually 512. Move that up here. Then up to about the bow of the ship. And I don't think we need to get too committed to texturing things right now. The idea of a blockout is that you would have a what's called an orange box or a gray box texture. Orange boxing and gray boxing being other terms for blockout. And also so named because in Hammer, again, there are like gray grid textures and orange grid textures to show you like the units of how long something is. And so typically you would just do all this and not really care about the texture, but I don't think that there's a gray box or a blockout texture for IdTech 4, and I wonder why that is. So do like sculpted, so like concrete, metal, I don't know. So it's like brick. Let's include concrete. Dirty large blocks. No, I don't think so. Flat, natural. Oh, maybe. Oh, yeah, concrete. Here we go. Mildew. How does that look? It's okay. You can really tell it's repeating here. But again, I'm not going to care about that too much right now. All right. Alright, so all we need to do is duplicate that. Boom. Got our locked doors. And so I think actually, if we think about this as a working flow of water, we would probably want this to be the surface that extends here, through here, or under the locks, because that way water wouldn't necessarily leak out. You know what I mean? That was a weird way to phrase that. Alright, so overarching area for this lock. No. Oh, God. The shortcuts of one program are seeping into my understanding of the shortcuts of another. So, wow, this really does not... Or is it just like extending past... No? That's odd. And I am at 100. Yeah, okay. But that's not lining up here. Oh, right. I'm not snapping to the grid. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, we'll call it 20. 20. Alright, so we're gonna snap there. And dead. So 128 times 20, well, that'd be 2560, right? And there we are. Easy. So that's how much space is between these two locks. So let's move these down over here. Great. And then we'll cheat and extend this a little under. Okay. And then beyond that, we will have... How many different level editors have you used out of curiosity? Dang. I guess technically the first one I used for like my level design class in college was Stencil. That's not a great tool to use. But then we moved over to Hammer, and I was actually really... That inspired me to move into level design, because I thought it was such a cool thing to use, and I also just thought it was like fun making stuff. Oh, that's why that's weird, huh? Then I did some maps in Amnesia, The Dark Descent, so I used their proprietary level editor. Then I did stuff in the Dark mod, and all throughout I was doing stuff in Unity for more systems design projects. And I've done a little bit of Unreal for like Albino Lullaby. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. All right. Oh, and some stuff for what's it? Like System Shock 2 and Thief. So this was 20, right? So we'll just make this 19. Sorry, I'm gonna make weird noises. I know that. I've just come to accept it. I apologize. Okay, so this ended up a little longer than anticipated compared to this measurement. Am I okay with that? I'm okay with that. Actually, no, because everything else is going to be based off of that, right? I think there was some finickiness with this being like 64 units short here, 64 units short there. Well, if I bring this, if I truncate this by like 256 units, will this still fit? It will, barely. Yeah, let's do that then. Can anyone hear those cars going by the way? And then again, this will be used to plug up the bottom. And then that's sort of our exit area. I'll stretch out the dimensions of this here. I'm planning on having a building sort of along this internal corner. So let's just do a quick set of walls for this area. Here, yeah, it's gonna be about there. So now we have this enclosed. Okay, not quite. What's it? All right, that'll be good. If I recall. Okay, yeah. So this lock, or the gates to this particular lock, are going to be flush with the wall of a building out over here. So I change the view on that. I'm like, I don't know how much over this particular one should be. So it's 246 times 128. Is that appropriate for a 2-story building? We'll figure that out when we get there. Boom. Over here. Okay, and then we're just going to need something to serve as the sky to block that in. Over here, over there. All right. And let's, where is it? See, with certain textures, I can just never remember where they are, because it's like there's dark mod specific textures in this folder, but then there's like everything else in here. It's not an editor, although that's where Viz Portal is. That's important. Skies. Well, this is default. So what I'm looking for is something called, there it is, portal sky. And this is sort of the, not skybox texture, but, it's a similar idea. It's going to be a texture that's rendered in parallax with like the rest of the setting. So as you move, it'll look like, there's stars up there. It'll actually give you a sense of depth with the geo that surrounds you. And so if I keep this, at least as a separate brush, because this is going to be building, or the corner of a building. Okay. Okay. And this is not going to be a terribly detailed area for the moment, but this is going to be sort of my stand-in for the town area. Actually, we can probably get a better sense of proportion here. Pull this over. And so, and if it's like really complicated, well, no. So drag that over. So it'll be, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 times 128, 1664. All right. So if this, that's like 1280, 1664. All right. So if we have these corners line up, and if these corners line up, are those actually flush with the, yeah, they're good. Although we'll need some over here because that space kind of extends out around this corner. Yep, we're good. Then we're going to want a floor here. Oops. Have it line up with that? No. Okay. And what's it? So the cool thing about this particular layout that I'm really excited to work on is that the play area here with all the buildings is also going to be moving downward with the canal, and so it gives you a nice sense of like where you are, and it like helps you stay oriented, or at least that's the idea, because downward slopes and elevation should always be pushing towards like the end of the canal, and upward slopes and elevation should always be pointing towards the beginning, So if we do that, then we do this. It is not exactly very detailed, but we will make do for now. And that's okay. I'm just going to copy this. because that'll be cutting into the ship's area. Drag that down here. Drag that down there. And copy that over here. It's extending into the... Yeah, I think so. All right. The last thing we need to do before we run this for the first time is sky for this particular area. See, this is just me like muttering to myself and not like saying much of anything insightful. And just imagine doing this for like 40 hours a week. And that's the job I want, I guess. All right, so there's a couple of things we need before we start moving into this. The first, and this is just going to be, well, you know, the first and most obvious thing is going to be a player start area. So it's, well, if I want to test the ship, I might want to actually put it somewhere on the ship, maybe. It's worth considering. Yeah, let's do that. So, center this a little better. Create player start here. Ooh-wee, look at that. Hang on, okay. So down here, that should be okay. All right, so just basics. The player needs to, you know where to start. What's the rotation? This is the rotation? Oh, I see. The little arrow point outward here. It's easier to see on the grid view right now, but I was just rotating the player to... Right? And the other thing we're going to need, and we're going to need this for a baseline for lighting and like how difficult the level is going to be as well. We are going to need an ambient light. So let's get into what we do for lighting. So on the grid view over here, it's pretty handy. Right click and create a light. Boom, it's right there. The strange thing about these lights in this engine is that, you know, normally when you're doing a point light, it's you know, a radius, so you're manipulating a sphere, like where it starts, how long or how far it extends. But for, you know, Doom 3, it's weird because it's like a square, and it's actually a rectangular prism that you can change the bounds of, so it doesn't necessarily need to stay. Hang on. Yeah, if I do the light properties. Is that right? All right, well, with the light properties up here, you can change that a little. You can have Omni, or you could have like a spotlight. We're doing Omni right now. Did that change? Yeah, it did. Yes, and if I recall, for an ambient light, we need to assign a particular texture. What's it? Ambient world. What's it? Lights. Ambient light NFO. Yeah, there we are. Okay, so that's the texture we need. And I believe, I'm not sure if you need to do this, but they recommend naming it ambient world, like that. So if I zoom in here, oh, come on, work with me. Why is this not working? Oh. Okay. Oh, okay, so here we are. I don't know what was going on there. Maybe I had something else selected too. But yeah, it's strange because light doesn't behave this way in the real world. You can't like make it like shine more in one particular dimension. But that's how it's implemented here for some reason. So with that, we're going to stretch it over the bounds of the whole space. Actually, if it's going to include that space off there, we need to be over here. All right, that's pretty good. Well, except for the height. There we are. Okay, good. All right, and now when we start the map, it's going to be evenly lit. At least according to that shade. Depending on what sort of setting you do and where you want it to be, you can color it different things. Last time, in my old map that we went over last week, I sort of tinted it like slightly reddish, purplish, and people were weirded out by that. Well, not weirded out, but it was just like, you know, there's no reason to do it. So I think I'm gonna stay a little more tame here. Let's do, say, gray. Or isn't there a separate brightness? Oh well. Yeah, let's sort of do something like that. And then, because this is an aquatic area, maybe just a touch of blue. Yeah, so we go over there. Sort of basing itself off of that. Okay, something like that. Maybe that's a little too intense. I did custom colors, I guess. Okay. Right. Oh. And so for entities, just objects in the world, you can right click on here and go add property. All of these things in here are properties that you can just sort of add and remove at any point. It's sort of like if you've ever used Unity, it's like adding a component kind of, except it's always just like one key value pair, I believe is the technical term. So for lights, and it's nice because for lights it kind of groups all the light ones in a separate folder because we are looking at a light. So if there's like brightness or intensity or something like that. Yeah, I gotta look this up some other time. Oh, light radius rotation. No. Alright. Alright, well, we'll see how that looks. And so I'm Frick from the TDM forum. Do you mention the TDM installers? I did last session. I'm not sure I did. Yes, some members of the forum got in contact with me. If you want to install the dark mod for yourself, then they recommend using the installers off of the site. So let's do dmap canal, not Kamal. Oh, great. Leaking already. Off to a great start. File, point file. Where did I mess up? There's no way to go faster, is there? Where did Jared mess up? Oh, that'll do it. Right out of sight. Well. Okay. All right, let's try this again. Beautiful. I also noticed my voice is starting to go. Didn't help that I was sick the past week. Oh, okay. So I'm not sure why this happens, but it, like, when you start a map, it ends up like drawing a texture like way across the way from the player start. And I'm not sure why, but it does give you a good sense of like the color of the lighting. So this is like a nice bluish. I don't think that's like too exaggerated. It makes it feel icy though. So that might be part of it. I said that might be part of it as if that made any sense. It didn't. But yeah, this is extremely bright. Because according to the legend, we're just fully visible all the time. So if I can get this shade and then bring it down to a darker color, that would be good. But yeah, here we are on this empty ship. And this is really what inspired me to do this concept the first time, because I saw this model and it was just like, hey, it's completely hollow. You can just put whatever you want in there. Yeah, alright. So already we're going to make a couple tweaks. First off, boom. The color. So if I just drag this down to like here, 11/27/98. That still might be a little too bluish. Yeah, so if I tone down this value, let's go 70. Nope. What happened there? What? That's not what I wanted. No, I want you to undo. Alright, well I just hit Control Z a bunch of times. I'm not sure if it undid anything else. Just want to check. Yeah, and it did. Great. Although it did actually change this color. Huh. Back to white. Did it change texture? No, we're good. Ah, dang. I just had that in custom colors. God damn it. Alright, well, let's go with something like this and maybe a little more towards cyan. Something like that. Oh, did I not hit apply? God damn it. Add to custom. Okay. I think that'll be all right. That one, the radius is still good. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, maybe that's still a bit too bluish. Yeah, it's pretty strong. Alright, well. Okay. So for that, instead of editing this, let's go down to like 343. Will that work? Oh, that'll work just fine. Actually, let's go to like 2.5. That's still like bluish tinted. And you'll notice this will, oh, a bus is going by. You'll notice this will happen every now and again. I just get hyper fixated on like one detail. I get lost in the trees instead of the forest. Okay. Alright, that's pretty nice. You can see with the light gem at the bottom, moving brightens it just a little, so it's like the player's always on the cusp of it. And then like standing up makes the player more visible. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. Oh, actually, no. Let me resume. Anything else I want to check out while I'm here? I don't know, I guess not. What was it? Actually, just for the hell of it, I think it's show FPS? FPS? No. It's a con show. No. All right, it's probably an underscore. I'm an idiot. Yep. FPS 1. No. All right, so good. On the top right there, we have our frame counter. That's about it. Oh, right. I want to set the sky texture because it looks like we have nothing being drawn there. And I forget how to do that. But in the grand tradition of anyone trying to figure out how to use a set of tools, our best friend is Google. So this is actually pretty handy. Let's go wiki, the dark mod wiki. There we go. Sky. No. Skybox. All right. How to create a sky texture using TerraGen. How to build a skybox. How do I details the skybox? Oh, isn't this for 3D skyboxes? Skybox room walls. Yeah. So that's not what I want to get into. Live viz portals. What was this texture name again? Portal sky. All right. So why didn't that show up? Was there sky? How many hits do we get? 1 of 6. Encasing skybox brush. Sky. No, I don't think we'll get it here. We have to poke around. Maps. View. Background image. I'm not sure about that. Oh, map info. Light one. Oh. Oh, hey, look at that. Shaders. Layers. Well, I don't think I'm gonna find this right now, so let me skip that part, and let's actually just get into the ship interior like I said we would. Oops. All right. Oh, that didn't snap the way I wanted. So let's grid and 100 so we actually have an accurate picture as to the measurements. So where do we want to start? Do we want to do something like small? Okay. So let's at least start in the main deck. So I think the forecastle, that'll be nice and small. We can just start there. So if I move over here, yeah, okay, this will be a good place to start. So it's kind of tough to tell, but with the side view, you can tell that this is a, oh, whoops, hang on, I gotta turn it around. Yes, forecastle here. You can tell that this is a particular type of ship called a galleon. I kind of went over the parts of it last session, but this is the main deck right here where the player start is located. You have steps going up to here, what's called the quarter deck, and behind there, in there, is going to be the captain's quarters. Here's the top deck or the poop deck, and here's something called the forecastle because, you know, it's forward. And on a galleon, this is typically where higher ranking officers would be housed. And so this is sort of the smallest area of the interior that needs to get done. So I figure let's start simple. So basically everything here is going to be wood, unless there's like a particular carpeted area in fancier places, like the captain's quarters. Okay. Let's get this down pretty granular. Right there. Let's move that floor down. Does that make sense? I think so. So then here, within here. Oh, and here's where we get into the fun shape manipulation. So if you open a 3D modeling program, you will be able to adjust things based on like object modes, but you can also manipulate things based on their faces, which is basically manipulating by triangle, or you can go into edge mode, which is something like here. Obviously this isn't a 3D modeling program, but it has some of the functionality of one. Or you can edit by vertex mode, which means that you're going to be editing individual vertices, some of which this editor will not like. But if I go back to edge mode and I move this in, then we can get a nice, though maybe rough trapezoid shape here to cover for the interior floor. Again, excuse me. So I think we're good there. I don't know how far we need to. Oh, hang on. I don't think I deselected the corner. Yeah, there we go. And will that be okay? I think so. So in the grid view, it's handy because it at least shows you in what dimension, or one dimension, how wide it is. So it's 232 units. All right, I need to get this on screen. This is tough balancing this for like visual interest. But from here to here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so the thing is that something to note real quick, just so I could fit this all into one image that wasn't like crazy huge. The scale of this is halved, so like 1 cube of this grid pattern is 128 units, whereas on all the other diagrams it's 64 units. So I got to keep that in mind. So 4 times 64, that is 256, and that was 232 wide. So it needs to go a little farther. Right. $56. There we are. And none of that is poking out. Okay, some of it's poking out. just tuck that in. And I think we're good there. Is this the texture I necessarily want? I don't think so. Dark mod. Wood. Boards. Generic rough wood. Nah. Oh. Planks. Dark glossy. Planks worn brown. Oh yeah, that looks great. Maybe they're a little large compared to, you know, this texture out here. But I think that'll do for now. Gray. No, that's more of a brown. So we just copy this. To about here. Yep. All right. It's still gonna feel a little cramped. And again, it's a little narrower towards the top, so is anything poking out? I do not think so. That's good. Maybe give this a couple more units. Yeah, okay, there it's poking out. How do I want to do this? Right, because this is like going like slightly inward. So let's shave off like 4 units here. There we go. Oh, whoops. Stretching to get the walls. Apply there. Then we're going to here. Nice, nestled in that door frame. Although this is going to prove troublesome. Yeah. Here we are. Just out here. Oh, is this visible? No. Okay. Awesome. Is this extending all the way? Not quite. That's the tough thing about these interior spaces, because getting the world spawn in there is gonna like take up a certain amount of space, and so it's gonna feel real cramped real fast. Is that It's a little, that's fine, it looks like. Okay, so for a more diagonal line like this, it's easier to sort of do the horizontal length, like if it were a straight line on a 90-degree axis. "90-degree axis, what the fuck am I saying?" Yeah, so it's just easier to do that. Make sure that those line up. Not quite. Yep, looks like it. And then just take these edges over here and move them in. So here's a good view. And that's pretty good. And I should emphasize, by the way, I know I went over this, but because of these funky shapes, and also because this is going to be moving with the exterior model of the ship as well, none of this is going to end up as world spawn. We're going to convert that to, I think, func static, and then if we bind it to the ship that's going to be moving, actually, yeah, let me show you. Links. There's like target bind. So basically that just means that that's going to be parented to a object. So as the object it's bound to moves, it's going to move the same distance with it. I think that'll cover our case. But if not, there's got to be like some way to there's got to be some way to like have all of this move with the ship, or like some sort of a type of object that you can convert this into that will do that. And again, this over here. I think I'm gonna go till 5 again, if people are all right with that. Well, I didn't go till 5 the last time, not out of choice, but up here, yep. Okay. Oh, but this is poking in. Interesting. I think that'll be alright, but we can adjust that later. Okay. So we have this interior space. And then we have this mast. And I don't know how that particular aspect is constructed on galleons in particular. And maybe it's like a ship by ship thing, but at least on my level design doc, I was anticipating for it to actually come through in the forecastle interior and actually serve as a part of the geo. So, okay, how would we do that then? I'm not sure I've ever had to create a cylinder in this level editor. This is gonna be weird. Let me. And if push comes to shove, we can just do this for now. There's another thing that we can do here called a patch. Oh, actually, will that work? Oh, look at that. But I'm not sure this is going to work for moving. Anyways, there's a thing called a patch, which is sort of like a deformable terrain thing, and you can adjust it per vertex here. I want to be really careful because on my last level, I had a lot of experiences with patches crashing. Crashing the editor when I was messing around with them. Yeah, but you can kind of see here with this vertex, like you pull it out, it bulges, and so you can basically deform that to whatever you need it to do, provided that editor stays stable. Let me just line this up. Oh, great. Oh, hang on. If yeah, more or less. Nice. Then if no, I don't think I can do that necessarily, but if I select all these vertices, which is kind of a pain. Right? I should be able to move those down, right? Yeah, there we go. Except I missed one, of course. Yeah, it's kind of weird how the patches are constructed. Because it's kind of like a, if you were to sort of like wrap a bunch of tin foil, like there's going to be a seam somewhere. And that means that there's going to be two vertices that are going to be in exactly the same positions along each vertex in the seam. So there's really no way the first time around to select those, as far as I know. Textures. There we are. Okay. It's pretty good. All right, well, there's this interior. Do I want to do anything else with it before we test it? Because the rest of this layout is furniture. I'm not sure I want to put that in until the decoration stage, but it's also kind of dependent on, or like the gameplay is also kind of dependent on it. Nah, I think I'll wait. How many people? 8 still. I'm surprised. Thank you so much for putting up with me being boring this time around. Okay. Yeah, let's check it out. Attack. Hey. Yeah, that's pretty much what I expected. There's going to be 2 beds along this wall and 2 beds along this wall. So it's definitely going to be more cramped. But even accounting for that, this feels like wide enough for maneuvering. And I was also really concerned about this mast coming down, because I thought that would like really break the flow of the place and like be very inconvenient to get around. But no, feels pretty all right. Got enough space between there and the door, so that's good. What next? This is also a very strange layout that I decided I wanted to go with. But there's this sort of back area. And so I thought it would be fun to have a... All right, where are we? Okay. So here's the forecastle where we were just at. And this is on the main deck. If you go back here, there's 2 doors into this area. And so I thought it'd be weird, but also kind of fun to have a sort of broad view of, say, like a semi-spiral staircase going down here. And then you'd have this sort of grand view here. Couple of guards messing around. And then this would like lead back to, you know, below deck. And on the back here would be sort of an alternate entrance if the player can like jump into the water and climb up here. I got to figure out how to make that work. And so because of that, there's also this space right above this area, but the quarter deck kind of goes up to here. You know what I mean? So like up on excuse me, up on the quarter deck here, that sort of corresponds with this beam moving down. And so that's sort of like the floor. And if you trace that back, then, you know, this is sort of the space you have for like a captain's quarters. But then that kind of leaves like this space down here between the ceiling here and the floor of the captain's quarters. So it's like, what's kind of in there? So I thought it'd be fun to, and I don't think this is realistic shipbuilding at all, but I think it would have been really fun to kind of stuff a galley in here. This is a little complicated because of the way the steps to the captain's quarters like slope down here, so that's kind of like poke into this area, I think. But I think we can make it work. So let's try that. So here's those 2 doors that are right next to each other. Oh geez, these are all very long blocks. This moves. Okay, so that's 128 units wide. And then if this is a trapezoid, the smaller side here is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 64. 448. Let me write this down. Times 128. Okay. Okay, so it'll be the same height as this. Drag this up. Move this over. Actually, I'm gonna delete this, but the nice thing about this is that it's a little weird to explain, but if you are like select something over here and then you're like I'm in the top-down view on the grid view. So if you do that and you like drag to create a new cube, then it's going to copy the same height as the thing you last selected, if that makes sense. Alright, so this is going to be 448 it's at. $448. All right. Again, is this poking out? No. Poking out here? No. All right. And I think that's more or less centered. Flare this out a little bit. I think that matches the angle. That's okay. There. Oh my god, it's 449 already. Jesus. When did that happen? Okay. This is pretty good. And let me get a wall here. That's good. These are portholes, aren't they? I just realized these aren't going to make sense because there's going to be nothing on the other side. Jeez. Alright, well. I could figure out like decor for them later. That's just above the arch. Yeah, that's good. And have those intersect into the door frames. That's good. The only thing is that this sort of sticks out beyond the door frame. I'm not sure I like that. So I'm going to shift this over 4 units because this is 8 thick. And that looks fine. And that's good. All right. All right. Just a few more minutes. And then I can turn on my AC again. Because my God. So move this over here. This is gonna be weird because it's like gonna be like a slanted rectangle, but basically from here to here where it bends a little more. That's gonna be 2, or no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'll be 320 units. I got through college. I can get through. Thanks for the vote of confidence. And I think that'll be 128 wide. What did I just say? 320 units? 20. There we are. Then we're going to move that in. Nope. Mess that up. Okay. Slant over here. Yep, that looks good. Yes, from here, that's back to being... No, it isn't. Okay, that's a normal rectangle. So, from this point, about here, yeah. I'm not sure those are the same angle. So that ends up being 176 from this point to that point along this axis. And it's 184, so yeah. Pop that back another 8 units, and we should be good, provided. Okay, we're good. Yeah, but see already, the stairs are going to come in here and block the view, and it just won't make a lot of sense in layout. So I think we need to, and then, you know, if I I moved the player start back here as like reference for the height. Yeah, that's like just barely taller than the player. Yeah, maybe a little more. But yeah, so I think in the, he's back there. So I think in the level design doc I specified that there should be like a dip. Yeah, okay, I totally forgot to do that. I think, yeah, these are sort of my representation of stairs. The arrow sort of points up to where they're like ascending. Yeah, but it's almost 5, so I don't know. I think we'll call it here. Anything else that we want to do, or anything else that we want to like check in the game before doing or before leaving? I don't know. Last week I said I would upload the level design doc to the Last Life forums. I neglected to do that. My apologies. I'm going to try better to remember to do that this week, hopefully in the next couple days. Next Sunday, well, I don't think I'll miss it, but there is a event in Boston happening this weekend for game devs. And I plan on being there at least Friday and Saturday. I don't think on Sunday. I should be able to be back, but just a forewarning that could be complicated. If not, I'm planning on hitting up one of my coworkers to hop on to just talk next time, and so hopefully we won't have to deal with more just like it's 16 units, for the rest of this. So yeah, I think we're gonna call it today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited to actually get to the point where we're doing things, and we can actually have something to show here. All right, see you guys. Shit, gotta start.